In an era when horror cinema was locked in a race to outshock itself, one film chose a completely different path. Rather than reaching for visceral spectacle, it leaned into something far more unsettling: silence, shadow, and the kind of dread that doesn't announce itself but slowly fills a room. The story behind the camera is every bit as fascinating as the one in front of it. The decision that defined the entire production before a single frame was shot was a refusal. A refusal to include gore, graphic violence, or any of the visual brutality audiences had come to expect. This wasn't accidental restraint, it was a deliberate philosophical choice. The director believed genuine terror lived not in what the eye could see, but in what the mind was left to imagine. Without shock imagery to fall back on, every tool had to work harder. A creaking door had to carry real weight. A shifting shadow had to mean something. The silence between lines of dialogue had to feel dangerous. Behind the camera, the lead actress was already being tested before production began. When she first read the complete screenplay and understood the full, devastating truth hidden at the story's core, she was profoundly shaken. Nightmares followed. She genuinely questioned whether she could inhabit such a role without it breaking something in her. The director worked closely with her, encouraging her to focus not on what her character had done, but on who she was, a woman fractured by isolation, religious terror, and the psychological wreckage of wartime. That emotional turbulence wasn't manufactured. It was lived, and it showed in every frame. The screenplay itself underwent significant transformation. Early drafts handled the central revelation through direct dialogue and clear exposition, functional, but emotionally hollow. The director spent months reworking the ending, pushing towards something quieter and more devastating. He wanted the truth to surface gradually, so that understanding dawned slowly alongside the audience rather than simply being announced to them. That shift transformed the film from a clever genre exercise into something genuinely heartbreaking. One of the production's most unusual challenges was communication itself. The director spoke very limited English when he took on this English-language project. Rather than seeing this as a crisis, he developed an almost entirely physical approach to directing, demonstrating emotional beats himself, shaping performances through atmosphere rather than instruction. Freed from the conventions embedded in English-language horror, he approached the material with a genuinely fresh perspective, and cast members later reflected that his methods pushed them toward more instinctive performances than they might otherwise have delivered. The film's fog-wrapped manner was achieved without ever setting foot in Britain. The entire production was shot at a historic Spanish estate chosen for its naturally overcast skies and coastal atmosphere. What the team discovered was that the building's genuine age worked in their favor. Cracked plaster and weathered walls that would have taken weeks to fabricate were simply already there, lending the setting a credibility no amount of set dressing could fully replicate. Strange things happened on set that no one could fully explain. Crew members reported unexplained sounds echoing through empty corridors. Equipment picked up whispers and footsteps that hadn't been audible during takes. At least one crew member refused to return to a particular section of the building. The director dismissed all of it as old wiring and overactive imaginations. Whether or not he was right, the unease it generated on set seeped into the production in ways that deliberate craft alone could never have manufactured. For the film's pivotal séance sequence, the director immersed himself in genuine historical research, studying Victorian spiritualist practices through period photographs, written accounts, and first-hand testimonies. The positioning of hands, the phrasing mediums used, the quality of silence between responses, all of it drawn from documented sources. The result was a scene that felt genuinely historical rather than theatrically staged, and that authenticity made the moment of revelation all the more devastating. The musical score was composed before filming even began, an almost unheard-of reversal of standard practice. As both director and composer, he wanted those themes influencing creative decisions from the start rather than being fitted to finished footage afterward. Themes were played on set to establish mood and pacing. Actors performed with the score's emotional register already in mind. The result was an unusual cohesion between sound and image that made the music feel inseparable from the story itself. The sound design went even further, employing techniques that operated just below conscious awareness. Whispers and faint breathing were mixed into the audio at levels too subtle to identify but detectable enough to trigger instinctive unease. Sound designers spent weeks calibrating precisely the right frequencies, present enough to be felt, quiet enough never to be named. Audiences reported feeling watched during certain scenes without being able to explain why. That sensation was entirely engineered. The film's commercial success surprised almost everyone. It didn't arrive as a cultural explosion, it built slowly through word of mouth, extending its theatrical run far beyond initial expectations and ultimately earning over $200 million worldwide against a $17 million budget. For a film with no gore, no jump scares, and a pace that demanded patience, the numbers made a clear argument that audiences weren't simply hungry for spectacle. They were hungry for something that trusted them. More than 2 decades on, the film holds its place as one of the most precisely crafted supernatural stories ever made. What it understood, above everything else, is that fear is not primarily a visual experience. It is a cognitive one. It lives in the gap between what is shown and what is suspected. The most effective scares do not arrive. They accumulate. And this film accumulated them, quietly and relentlessly, until there was nowhere left to look but inward.